Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor-Winter and I'm the creator, editor and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. This episode is part of my Erasmus Plus category. A new term has slowly slipped into the world of Erasmus Plus, microcredentials. And most of the community is perplexed. What is it? How should it be understood? What is the definition? How do we integrate it into the proposal, and how do we work with this in the implementation phase? The Grant comes to your rescue. Daiana Hooper is a friend of the Grant, and she is also very engaged in what is going on. She reached out because she sees a need for clarifying what microcredentials are and how to work with it. I, of course, agreed, and together with her colleague Samuel Bogdan, who has been working intensively with microcredentials in proposals, we sat down for a conversation about this term to clear up heads and tails on it. This episode is obligatory for all Erasmus Plus stakeholders. Please enjoy. Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today I have a regular, I would say, Daiana, and Bogdan, good contact of Daiana on board here today. We're going to have a look at Erasmus Plus, and we're going to look at a term or concept or discourse, whatever we'll get close to that in this conversation, called microcredentials. And before we discuss anything about this, Daiana, can you please introduce yourself? Ladies first, Bogdan.
Excellent. I'm happy to have the opportunity to introduce myself multiple times here because I get to reinvent myself depending on our conversation. This time, what is relevant? I'm one of the coordinators of A Pact for Skills. I'm a developer and grant writer, hence our connection here. I'm happy to have Sami as my office colleague and partner in crime when it comes to microcredentialing. And we have started this journey in which we are trying to figure out what a digital artifact of learning evidence is and how can we use it in our projects. And yes, we implement European projects, mostly on Erasmus. And I think for this conversation, this is more than enough of me reinventing myself.
Thanks for this. Bogdan.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, my name is Sami Bogdan. Bogdan is the last name.
Yeah. It's because I know Romanians and I know that it's an absolutely normal name.
It's
so you have two first names.
Exactly. It's a common name in Romania for first name. Yeah, well, what I can say about me, I'm not the tourist guy. I'm the digital guy, if I can say that way. And I'm working at the intersection of the design and implementation and somehow interpretation of the concepts related to our subject, microcredential. So yeah, I'm the geek here, if I can say that.
Yeah. Thanks. So now, Daiana, I'm going to put you on the spot here because you're the one that requested this conversation. So just a few words before we start to taking it from Adam and Eve of why the Commission has introduced all this. So what in microcredentials? What are we? What are we talking about here?
It is a fair warning to give to our listeners because by now you know you know me, and yes, Adam and Eve will be mentioned in the conversation. And in this context, Adam and Eve means from the Treaty of Lisbon onwards. But what is a microcredential? That is a challenging conversation depending who are we answering to and why are we answering and to do what with the information. We are discussing the bigger concept of credentials. What is a credential? A credential is an artifact. Imagine the Sphinx. The Sphinx is an archaeological artifact, a testament that a culture and some people were there in that physical space. You have no other proof than their physical remaining, even if their culture is much more than just the Sphinx. Do this analogy for a credential. A credential is an artifact, digital or non-digital, a testament, an objectification of a process that is exclusively internal, which is the meaning making a learner has the moment a learning output has been internalized. That is the description of learning. Learning is an internal process. Learning happens exclusively inside the learner. But learner has to demonstrate somehow that this process existed. How can it demonstrate an internalized process, which is the meaning making? By showing byproducts, the Sphinx, by showing objects, let's say, that prove the happening of the process. Those objects, let's say, are the learning outcomes. What is the result that remains after the learning process? The result, the outcome looks like long, tall, blue with polka dots. Okay, but how can we put this into an actual artifact that is a tangible object? Well, you put it under the form of a credential. Digital or non-digital, macro, micro, meso, those are characteristics. But the credential in itself, it is this, the artifact of a process that happens inside the learner. Does this make sense?
Yeah, but yes. But I think it's also a little abstract, but what you could say, it's a recognized proof. Yeah. Of learning outcomes.
Recognition is another conversation. Yeah. It is a proof, yes.
Yeah. From short learning experience?
From the learning process.
Okay.
Long, tall, short, wide, that is again a characteristic. But a credential is an artifact, a demonstration of, in our case, of an internal process. In pretty much the way the electronic signature is the artifact in a digital format of me signing something. But I'm sure Sami can also add to the definition of what is a credential in our context.
Yeah. Well, what I want to say here first is from the technical perspective, why this microcredential matters is because until now, digital systems were just copies of our real-life documents. I think today we are moving into a digital-first reality, and microcredential are designed exactly for that shift where credential and digital documents are created and issued and also used natively in digital form. So that's why I think microcredential matters in this discussion or today, because that things are changing from the technical perspective.
Okay, you know what? Let's get into to the blocks here, because then it might be easier for people to understand the concept. So, if we move into the first block we have here, so it's quite simple. So, why the Commission has introduced this concept? Any shot at that?
Sami, would you like to start or should I?
Um, I think you should,
Okay.
because you
Okay.
are connected
Sure.
more with this
With the
area. But
policy side.
yes, exactly.
Yes. Well, this is not the invention of the European Commission. The whole concept of credentials, micro and macro, digital and non-digital, they have been existing for a long time in the science that governs this, which is pedagogy and educational sciences. This is a conversation that is relevant for everybody around Europe. Please do not forget, microcredentials are embedded in the conversation of educational sciences and pedagogy. They are not an invention of the European Commission.
Mm-hmm.
They are an instrument and a tool to push a specific kind of policy. And like a lot of other instruments and tools from science have been taken up by policy in order to push one or the other narratives. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go very deep into the policy and political debate because this is a complex one and deserves another kind of podcast. And it's not for me to have an opinion at this point. It is what it is. We have what we have, and we love what we have, and we work with that. That is the premises. So, micro-credentials, so a small kind of credential that is built in a specific way to serve a specific purpose, exists and has been, let's say, promoted more and more into the public conversation, more and more into the world of grant writing, with the launching of the Year of Skills. The Year of Skills is a political action and a policy action and a funding mechanism in the context of von der Leyen Commission, especially second von der Leyen Commission, and started more with the launching of Union of Skills, which is for which the visible face is Commissioner Manzato. So for anyone wanting to understand micro-credentials, the Union of Skills, and before that, the Year of Skills, and the work that now DG Employment does are essential readings. Again, topic for another podcast. And now I sound like Scheherazada, keep postponing and postponing topics for other podcasts, but it is what it is. In this context, micro-credentials are used by the public language, the public policy promoted by the European Commission and promoted by Commissioner Manzato team to bring the idea of democratization of access to, they say, learning. It's not necessarily learning, to give a more available access to workers, and here I have big air quotes, onto a more dynamic labor market, again big air quotes, in showing that they are good at doing something, again big air quotes. That means micro-credentials are there to help us show that we have specific competences which are not captured by formal diplomas, let's say, or formal qualifications. so that we can show interesting things that we have learned to employers, employers recognizing them, believing that we really mean what we say, and help us get a better job. This is not my opinion or version. This is a translation of the idea behind the policy conversation related to microcredentials. They are more complex and more challenging and more impactful than this, but the easy conversation is that we want to promote microcredentials because they will make our workers more flexible on a changing labor market. That is the context.
Okay.
I want to add here a practical perspective, if I can say it that way, is that somehow the traditional education moves really slow and the labor market really fast. So this is how I can say the Commission needed a tool to support lifelong learning, without forcing people going back into long formal programs. So it's more skill or competences oriented.
So it's to avoid, it's to help that you don't have to go through a year-long courses to upgrade or to get it recognized, because that's what it's about, right?
Sorry, I need to bring clarity to the conversation. Microcredential is something that shows, demonstrates in a credible, measured, standardized way that I know something.
Yeah.
Full stop. Microcredential is not the learning process, is not the teaching process. Microcredential doesn't care if I learned something in a school, on the street, in my car, at the job, or being with you guys in a podcast. Microcredential is detached from anything. Learning, education, institutions, and people mix this in the conversation because nobody has this publicly explained. Microcredential is a product. Full stop. Microcredential is not the learning process. Microcredential is not a seminar. Microcredential is not a diploma. It is not anything of these. I can get a microcredential by sitting 3 hours in a podcast, or by spending 5 days at university, or by spending 1 year abroad. It is still a microcredential if I do it in a specific process, and if it will demonstrate that I have internalized some learning outcomes. Full stop. Formal, non-formal, informal, adult, vet, non-vet, traditional, non-traditional, those are characteristics that the microcredential doesn't care about. The microcredential is an object, is a vase. The vase doesn't care about the water or the flowers that it holds. It's there to hold the water and the flowers. Full stop. You want it transparent, white, glazed, tall, short. That is up to you.
So that's very thanks, because it's, again, this is we're circling in on defining this so it gets more and more clear, and in a conversation it always helps when you start to talk about things to sort of cut closer and closer into the bone, so it's also clearer for everybody out there on the other side with the headphones on. Yeah, that's understood, and that's also actually we sort of covered the next block, because that is what is a microcredential. That's this is the conversation we just had, right? Is there anything else?
Absolutely.
Is there anything else from this block here? So here, I have here core elements of the microcredential. Just define that, and you also define what microcredentials are not, or what?
Oh,
Is there
yes.
anything you need to add?
So, from my point of view, I want to point out to the listeners that micro-credentials are a part of portability of skills policy, but they are not the portability of skills in itself. They're just one instrument for that policy. So maybe you want to read into that. That is adjacent to the union of skills. It is part of the micro credentials, but you will never ever have true, authentic portability of skills if you just say, I'm going to implement micro credentials. Essential micro credential belongs to the learner. They don't belong to the institution, they don't belong to anybody else but the learner themselves. A microcredential is a microcredential if it is issued and respects and has the backbone of the European digital credential issuer. And here Sam is more expert than me. And there is no micro credential outside of the learning outcome conversation. If you are not able to write a learning outcome from your learning experience, then it means that this is not a credentialable learning experience. So, what does that mean on planet Earth? If I attend a conference together with Sami, we are going to get a credential for participation.
Mm-hmm.
Digital, amazing, wonderful, set the structure, but it doesn't make it a micro credential just by sitting at a conference and participating. I need to have attached a learning outcome that says this learner, by sitting in a conference, is able to do, feel, emote, jump, run, I don't know what, in this specific context for this specific time with these specific requirements, and the learner has uploaded or provided the following proof. There you go. This is the learning outcome. Then you get a micro credential. Please do not associate micro credentials with, let's say, participation.
Yep.
But I will add here what you said before. Yes, you have to have the learning outcomes, but without the assessment process, also you don't have a micro credential, because you have to have an assessment process clear that somehow proves what that person achieved during that whatever it is, course or so without the assessment part you don't have the micro credential.
Okay, let me take a short example from my now former work. Blame you, right? Hydrogen you. We had an in-person training, aka the day before I was fired. No, an in-person training where it was on competition law, and so that was an external that came in. We were there, all of us around the table, and then they took us through the ideas of competition law. And then at the end of the training, there was a test where they went through. Would that be a micro credential?
No.
No?
No, because that test is only focused on your knowledge, not on what you know to do. That's a difference. And Diana can explain more about.
Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, I can. The favorite conversation. Micro-credential exists in the context of learning outcome. Mm-hmm. Learning outcome exists only and only in the context of something which is called a competence. Mm-hmm. A competence is what you know, as in knowledge, what you know to do, as in skills, and what you know to do in a specific context for a reason, which is called behavior and attitude. There is no such thing as knowledge walking down the street without the skills and the attitude and the behavior. There is no such thing as a skill walking down the street without having the knowledge of what you're doing and the attitude and the behavior, why you are doing what you are doing. These three legs can never ever be separated. Hence, the microcredential, which Sami pointed out exceptionally correct, you need to have proofs shown. You cannot show a proof just of knowledge and then what? That is like a repetitive algorithm or something like that. That is, I don't know. That's IA level. Yeah, good. That's an IA level when you're just repeating the knowledge that you have ingurgitated. It doesn't work like that. You also need to have a portfolio, a battery of study cases, a video where you show that you're actually doing something, a drawing that you made, a cake, a picture of a cake that you produced based on the knowledge and the skills and the attitude to demonstrate. Or, I don't know, there is a gazillion lists of proofs, but it doesn't work with just one leg. You always need to have three legs in order to demonstrate a learning outcome: the
Okay, so
knowledge,
so if
the
we
skills, and the attitudes.
so if we take my example, I would
Yes,
need to perform something with that knowledge, and then it would be a micro. I would need to perform
absolutely.
something with the GDPR knowledge I had been given to do something with that, a task, whatever.
Solve a problem,
Yeah,
respond how you would address a study case,
yeah.
demonstrate the solution on a complex challenge related to GDPR or something like that.
All right.
That's why here it's so relevant for labor market, the micro credential, because it, again, it proves what the people not only know, but what they can do. So that's why it's so relevant for the labor market and for the uh, skill recognition, if I can say that.
All right. That's it. Now we've been. I think we're circling and we're getting more and more clear and clear. So now I think we can move into, because we have two blocks. So for my dear listeners, this is of course a funding podcast, as everybody knows. So we are of course going to put this into the context of when you apply for funding and when you are in the implementation phase of your project. So here, the next two blocks. So first block, naturally, that's the proposal phase, and then we're going to tackle the implementation phase in the next block.
Hi, I'm Eleonora. I work for Science Business and I always listen to the grant.
Excellent. Proposal. What do you have to? How do you handle it? And when does it make sense to include this in the proposal? So.
Diana.
Yes. Since I'm the grant writer in this conversation, the conversation goes as follows. Because it's part of the policy, the Union of Skill, and because there are budgets attached to this, obviously that we now have a long list of call for proposals, some of them launched last week also, opened, not launched, apologies, opened, policy experimentation, which is a dedicated line for microcredentials. And if you want to score points from the smallest mobility to the biggest blueprint alliance, everybody is talking about portability of skills, which is a dangerous conversation to have. And they are putting in more and more the micro-credentialing aspect because it is a buzzword and because evaluators are trained to look for it. That doesn't mean that we know how to integrate them. The challenge is the following. When you think micro-credential wise in grant writing, you need to make sure that in the partnership you have the ecosystem that is ready to recognize the micro-credential that you're developing. You need to make sure that you have a pedagogue somewhere in the team to write the learning outcomes based on frameworks and profiles of competencies, because otherwise that's a big bunch of bollocks and you're never going to have micro-credentials unless you have learning outcomes. Then you need a very good technical team to help you describe what platform will you use and how it is connected with European digital credential issuer. Because if you do not respect their process or even use their process, I have highly question marks that we are talking actually about micro-credentials and we are just finger crossing that the evaluators are not thorough enough to check. You need to kind of know what you're talking about in all the aspects of the production chain. So how you're going to write it, who are your partners, and if they're going to recognize them, the micro-credentials, how are you going to implement it in practice and with what instruments, and make sure that the instruments you mention actually exist and they're actually for micro-credentials and not just some e-badges that you have just refurbished. Make sure that you have the learners interested, because you cannot force anybody to go through a process of micro-credentialing just to have another nice thing to put on their Europass.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you have the instruments in which to hold the micro-credential once it issues. An e-wallet, an Europass, something, right to the evaluator what you are going to put the micro-credentials in, not just in a thin air, and then explain the relevance. You're not producing collectibles, you're producing relevant instruments for the learners in your application. You're not producing micro-credentials for the sake of micro-credentials. They're vases. They're supposed to hold beautiful flowers, not just stagnant water that at the end of the project stinks. That is the image that we need to have in our head. They are a tool, an instrument, something that will enhance and support the true meaning of what we do. Offer the learners a valuable instrument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, can you pull an example of how you like, or try to give an idea how you would describe it?
How
you
I
would
would
structure,
put it in.
in your writing phase. So
Well, for the past 4 years, this was described in various variants: disastrous, impossible to implement, less disastrous, more possible to implement. And Sami is now laughing because he implements some of the things that I write, and it took us 6 months to figure out how the hell we are going to implement, because guess what? The projects actually got granted.
yeah,
And at this point, we have 4 of them in parallel. So how I would write?
we're gonna wait because I'm gonna keep a hook on that, because you will get to describe that when we reach to the implementation phase, because it's very good cliffhanger here to get that next step. But just you, Daiana, just give the description.
I would not make them a separate work package or a separate track of activities, but I would embed them from the start. First and foremost, have a work package where it is all about the learner co-producing the framework of competence.
Mhm.
Don't bring a framework of competence already made and slap it on the head of the learners. Ask the learners what is relevant for them. Don't have the impression that you come on a white horse to rescue people, because you're definitely not, and people are going to curse at you. So have a work package where you co-produce the framework of competence with specific profiles of competence, check with the learners if that is relevant in their current industry, check with CDFOP and ETF for the skills foresight and for the gaps, and to see if that is really the ahead of industry, and then write learning outcomes. Make another work package about developing the curriculum and everything that has to do with the pedagogy. Make another work package about the learning experience of people and look at all the learning experiences that you're able to provide in class, hybrid, transnational conferences, every single one of them. And then have a specific work package where it is about figuring out the evaluation part.
Mm-hmm.
What do we measure? How do we measure it? How do we put it in the process? How do we technically upload, download, create, generate, and all these kind of things? And how many people do I need? And is it staff cost? Is it subcontracting? Do I do what? Parenthesis. You don't need to buy or to develop, if you don't have a budget for it, anything else than just use European Digital Credential Issuer and put staff costs for people to work on that. If you are in a restrained budget, use the tools that are publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
And don't put subcontracting, put staff costs. Then do a trial run and issue at ecosystem level. That is how I write. Probably it's not ideal. Most likely it is not flawless. I'm sure that I've already experienced everybody poking holes to this concept. I don't have any other. We have to make it work. Mm-hmm. I will never look into other things that are, how can I say, open up a conversation of liability. I will never ever in my writing process touch the word accreditation. You don't need it. That is politically charged at national level. Never ever would I touch this conversation. I don't care about accreditation. I don't care about qualification. This is why we have microcredentials, not to touch those other two, which are exceptionally toxic in project writing because they depend on national policies, on member states, on anything that is outside of your capability to control.
Yeah, and of course, if we sort of take the listener, we step a little bit out of this. So this is, of course, in the context of Erasmus Plus is indeed a lot to do with national systems also, because many of the calls are related to the nationally evaluated decent.
This is a European conversation that has to follow through in every public funding supported by the European Commission. This is not national conversation, and we use this exactly not to go into national conversations and to have a suprastatal form of demonstrating learning.
Yeah,
suprastatal.
Yeah, but so the idea is, of course, not to distract people, but getting annoyed of being because of concepts that has a different meaning culturally, and like in each, and bureaucratically and so on. So indeed, is that if on the proposal phase? Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. That's proposal.
Yeah. So implementation. Samuel Bogdan or Bogdan Samuel?
Well, a proposal, it's important, but it's only the half story because the implementation, it's where the things are getting real or you have to really implement, and all what you promise in the proposal, you have to do it.
Indeed. Now tell us a little bit. So concretely, so you've been sitting and trying to get heads and tails in what Diana wrote in her proposals. Tell us share with us a little bit how you have been attacking this. And
Well, yes. When I start to read about microcredential, I didn't have any idea about how to do it or how to take it. And of course, you have to uh, understand the roles of each partner, for example, and you to give a role for each partner. For example, you can give a partner issuer, to be the issuer organization, another partner to have the assessment part, the design of the micro credential, or the learning outcomes, and also you have to have another partner with the qualification, not qualification, quality assurance of the micro credentials. So you have to have a clear mind on which is doing what is doing and how to do it. So this is you have to
explain I want you to explain the 6 months it took you and Diana to get your heads around this.
Oh wow.
Not to help people out there, because it's a process you've been going through, and so it's just to open a window into that process.
Well, first of all, I had to understand, like I said, what is a micro credential.
Mm-hmm.
So
after that took 2 months.
more than when I got at this part, I mean, when I got to micro credential, I said, okay, the technical part is the hardest part. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't think. I think understanding all the concepts of how to develop learning outcomes and how to work to create. I mean, that shift is what is competences, focus on skills, knowledge, and attitude. I think that was the hardest part for me, because, like I said, I'm a technical guy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, probably that was the first thing that I have to get clear in my head.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And then
we start to see exactly on our project how we're gonna implement it. I don't know what.
And what did you do, like you said, Diana, with testing it on the ecosystem?
I think I think I can step in a bit, because I get what you want out of us. Yes.
I want to open up a window into the process, because you have been in a place where you had no idea, or you really struggled to understand how you actually could work with this, or do it in this context, and how to put it into a
yes.
I
had a bit of an advantage, let's say, by the fact that I'm a bachelor in education sciences, and
that helps.
The evaluation theory was one of the major components of a 4-year university diploma. Mm-hmm. So, that is what it takes to understand the science. And it's not like a boogie problem to say that this is a scientific aspect. Yes, it is. I'm not sure why we want to simplify and to make it simplistic. No, it is one of the most complex aspects of the science of education. So we started reading, okay, what is a credential? What is the evaluation theory? How do you evaluate? What do you evaluate? You evaluate competencies. Okay, back to the books. What is a competence, and how do we do that? What it means? What are the instruments of evaluation? Okay, Then we figured out, but this conversation exists for a long time. Why is it all of a sudden now the conversation? Then, after we read education, science, and pedagogy content, then we started reading policy, public policy. Why does this exist? Who called it? In which context? Who serves? Who is out of the conversation? Follow the money. Why is this a conversation? Okay, we got it. So this was the second pillar. First pillar, pedagogy. Second pillar, policy. Third pillar. Okay, but then how do they want us to do it? Then we started reading methodology. What do we have? What are the guidelines? What are the regulations? What is the process? Who are the stakeholders in the conversation? Who do we have to listen? European Commission, CEDEFOP, ETF, UN, whatever, you name it, Sami has it indexed it there. World Foundation, Non-World Foundation, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea to Antarctica and Chile and Argentina and India and whatever. And then we had to stop and write the bloody concepts on pieces of paper and make them fit. Because we understood that we have the blueprint, but nobody tells us how to do it. Nobody. There is no savior coming to tell us how the micro-credentials work. We just have the science, the policy, and the methodology. The methodology is under the format of a guardrail, not letting us run on the fields. But the guardrails tell you the margins. The guardrails are not painting the road for you. We had to pick up brushes. It took us a whole week to understand that nobody's coming to tell us. We had online meetings with the policy officers from the European Commission, online meeting with people that developed the methodology for the credentials. And we had countless of hours chasing people on the European Commission to the level that they said, if you don't shut up, we are not going to answer to you anymore on this lifetime. You will be banned from Brussels if you keep asking so many questions. And the conclusion was, we give you the framework. It's your problem how you implement it. Stop expecting for us to tell us how you should be implementing it. You run the experiment, and then we look and say, go or no go. This is how it works. And once we crossed that critical step, we actually opened up accounts in the European Digital Credential Issuer, played around to see exactly what are the prescriptions, what are the roles, what are the requirements, and then it all falls into place. Conclusion. Nobody's going to tell you how to do it. You have to do it with fingers on the keyboard and experiment on your own.
Yep.
There you go. Right, Sami?
Right.
Was it a painful process? Well, the silence sometimes says more than words.
I don't know if it was painful or
Frustrating.
long process. Yeah, sometimes it is, I think.
Yeah.
For me, it was and still is exceptionally fun because I'm the geek in pedagogy, and I get to geek out. And at the end of the day, we are theoreticists discovering and having the opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity, to draw maps where no maps have been drawn before. This is exceptionally fun and challenging and meaning making, and it makes us alive because, yeah, it matters what we do. That is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I have a question. Now, one thing is that you understood, but how about the partners?
The one thing,
The
and
consultant.
then I will let Sami tell you exactly how he writes the guidelines and provides the instructions. But the one thing that is my part, I'm responsible for it. After I put the money on the table, my second responsibility is to build trust with partners. My partners have to believe that I will not kill them in the process.
Mhm.
And I'm more than privileged, I'm hyper privileged to have a stunning, amazing partners that even if they don't get it and they realize that they don't need to get it, they need to trust us. And that is exceptionally valuable. And that is the work of the grant writer as well.
Yeah, and you're a good one. So
Thank you.
it helps.
Sami, you're laughing your head off.
Well, I don't have much to say. Just with the partners, it's just like I said before, to give them clear instruction on what they have to do, and somehow to guide them on this process, because like Diana said, nobody tells you much. I mean, you get a lot of ideas or a lot of concepts, but when you have to do it in real life, in practice, you don't get much direction. So this is somehow our roles, I think, me and Diana, to give some direction to our partners, and somehow to make them a space where they can work with us, creating this micro-credential on this project.
All right.
Yes. And there is another thing related to the partners.
Mm.
Do you need your partners to know all the nitty gritty details? Because if yet, it's not a problem. You just need to be credible and you need to know all the nitty gritty details before, and then take time, online meetings, tedious, boring online meetings, and explain to the partners step by step everything. But in most situations, the partners don't need to know all the entirety of the philosophy of the policies or the whatever.
Yeah. You don't know. Yeah, it's yeah, of course not. They just need to know what they need to do in their part.
Absolutely. And essential, please tell your partners what you're not going to do. That helps a lot. Explain that micro-credentialing is not certification, is not accreditation, is not validation. You're not stepping in and replacing diplomas. You're not stepping in and replacing qualifications. They will not have to pay audits for ISO if they don't want to. They will not have to talk to their national qualification authorities. Nothing like that. And once you take those out of the conversation, you will see surprisingly smiley faces.
That for all you out there, take that advice for you, and that bridges perfectly into because we are ending up. I think we covered it, right? It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that bridges us perfectly into recommendations and advice section. It's been full of tips and how you've been doing it. But do you have anything practical advice besides from reading all the policy from all the policy documents? Diana, do you have anything else you want people to do?
Yeah, I was thinking if Sami has some list from this experience.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Read a lot. That's one big advice, because you have to see and understand. And also, what gave me a lot of clear was the doing on the European credential issuing platform. That helps you a lot to do if you are doing practical in a practical way. Sorry, I was messing with the words.
I think that was one of the most essential experiences, literally you going on a sandbox and joining their onboarding seminars and then telling me stuff that would create a totally different lens for me as a theoreticist and making things fall into place, because we were struggling with a lot of dilemmas. For example, how to issue in a log frame, what was the place for each of the partners. And after Sami participated on the onboarding webinars and actually opened the sandbox in the European Digital Credential Issuer Mechanism and played there, we realized, oh, we can issue it at packed level. And that was like the science fiction of the discovery, because it creates less of a trouble. And then literally going in there and clicking and seeing what it takes. But that is also the instrumental part. You need to go in parallel with the instrumental part and with the theoretical part. Theoretical part means actually reading, not using a resume, but reading and taking notes with the pen on the paper so that you can write, rewrite, reframe, put a big wall of post-its behind you and play with the post-its as the knowledge starts to create sense in your head. There are no shortcuts. Or yes, you can listen to this amazing podcast, have questions, write the podcast author, and then make good use of it.
Now, this is something that I haven't managed yet properly. My listeners, they are very non-communicative. They don't reach out for clarifying or anything. I'd love them to. So that's if any one of you out there listening to this, write, for Christ's sake. Write. If you have questions, write the guests.
Yes. People,
reach out.
Niels has access to people that actually push the buttons and actually issue the freaking microcredential. If you want access to these people, write to Niels.
Yeah. Oh, just there's so many, I have so many resources now because just the two of you. It's silly that people don't use this, and you know what I'm also started to do, but I've also started to do is that I am doing transcripts. So I'm transcribing the full episodes and putting them on the episode site, so people can download the transcript of what we're talking about, and then they can work with that as they want, also with the text about what we're talking about. Famous last words. Diana, you know the drill. The toughest challenge?
I know the drill.
What is the toughest challenge? Well, the toughest challenge was to understand it.
Yeah. Really taking ownership of this process and really wanting to discover has given me access to an amazing community of people like Sami that are sharing an interest. So I'm not the only crazy person in the room. And it has made me be alive. So that is some outcome that is absolutely non-monetizable. That is just precious. Absolutely precious.
Yeah. Samuel, do you have a tougher challenge on working with this?
Well, on all this process, I think there were a lot of times when I thought that I knew something, and after that, I realized that I don't know enough.
Kill me, quick.
Yeah, because you see, being a new domain, or a new subject, you find a lot of people talking about the same thing, but with different terms, in different ways. So yeah, and you learn on the process again and again, and you start a lot of time again. Yeah, that's I
Yeah.
think.
All right. Thanks. Now I'm just going to land the plane before we say goodbye to the listeners. So, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to the end. Now, I hope that you are wiser or enlightened, more enlightened, hopefully not more confused than when you started the push play button for this episode. All you, especially out there doing Erasmus Plus, I really hope that this has helped you. And as I mentioned, all episodes, they have their own site, and this one also has its own website on my platform. And there you have, I will put links to the resources, and Diana and Samuel, probably I need you to send me links for some of the places that you mentioned here, so I can put them there so people can find them easily. That's there. So go to my website, and while you're there, there's a lot of information on Erasmus. You'll find there's lots of episodes, podcast episodes on Erasmus. And to help me, a humble independent podcaster, do subscribe to my email list. It's there's an online form at the bottom of each of my pages on my website. So thanks for that in advance. Finally, connect with me on LinkedIn. And connect to go and like the Grant page on LinkedIn. That's where the traffic is. That's where the flow is, and that's also where I pick up my guests. So if you want to be a guest on the Grant, feel free to reach out, connect with me. The road is not that long; it's quite short actually, from being a listener to being a guest. That's that. Thanks, Diana, Samuel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Been a pleasure to have you in, and we will definitely hear more to Diana, because we will collaborate in the future. So that's already
Absolutely. And to the listeners, also please check out Sami's and my profile on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, we are people with opinions, so yeah, check us out as well.
Your LinkedIn profiles, the LinkedIn profiles of my dear guests here, will also be on the episode site. So by all means. Now, let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you will find links to Diana's and Samuel's personal LinkedIn sites. Further, there are relevant links to further information on Microcredentials. Finally, I have included a full transcript of this episode, so you can upload that in the ChatGPT and ask all the questions you have in relation to the conversation we have in the episode. Next week, I finally have a junior in the studio. I have been wanting to shed light on the conditions for juniors in this sector since I started this podcast in 2022. Marina Klitschko shares her troubled path from PhD to moving into research management. You can indeed look forward to that.